Hello and welcome back to the Let Me Add to That podcast. My name is Elizabeth Graswich, Executive Director of Public Affairs and Communications at the Los Angeles County Office of Education. We are the largest regional education agency in the United States. We serve 80 school districts and nearly 2 million children. We are excited to use this platform to take a deep dive into the conversations surrounding our students and schools in LA County. Happy July. It is officially summer, a time when many of us in education take a vacation or at least a breather before a new school year. A new year brings lots of new energy, new excitement, and of course, opportunity and changes. Sometimes change is scary, but most of the time it is exciting. Schools and students evolve every year to keep up with new practices, upgrades in technology, and social issues. So this month, we decided to get a little nostalgic. Talk about then and now, just how much classrooms have changed, technology and its effect on education and students, what we miss, and what we wish we had. Joining me today are two incredible educators, Debbie Stone, principal of San Gabriel High School, and Amanda Blackwood, math teacher at San Gabriel High School in Alhambra Unified School District. Welcome, Debbie and Amanda. It's great to have you here with us today. Let's start with sharing a little bit about your experience in education.
So I'll go first. My name is Debbie, and I've been with Alhambra Unified School District for 25 years, and the last 12 years as an administrator, and within those 12 years, actually finished my 8th year as principal at San Gabriel High School.
Nice.
And I joined Alhambra Unified in 2005. Debbie was actually my BITSA mentor, beginning teacher mentor, which is funny. So it's been about 19 years, if you can believe that, 19 years at San Gabriel High School.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah.
So let's just start back with a little bit of nostalgia. We'll start with you, Amanda. What's the biggest difference you see at schools today compared to when you were a student?
Well, I'm going to say the obvious answer is technology. It's everywhere in education nowadays. When I first started, we were still using whiteboards to kind of communicate our lessons. I thought I was super cool when I joined San Gabriel High School and I got an overhead projector. Remember those with the clear plastic screens and
Absolutely.
the vis-a-vis markers? At the end of the day, your hand was covered in a multitude of colors from all of your writing. But nowadays, we have the internet at our disposal. We have laptops. We have these big projectors. And kids are able to access the internet. We can use YouTube videos within our lessons really quickly. Google Classroom is at everyone's disposal, which is a great place for you to assign things, receive work, post and talk to your kids. So technology really has been the biggest, I think, shift.
Yeah. If I could add to that, as an administrator in a school, I think for me it's looking at our students and their needs, which have changed vastly from when I was in school. Or maybe students are just more vocal about their needs. But I know for mental health and all of the supports that we give in our counseling office and the staff that we have. So for example, I have currently at San Gabriel High School, we have 2 mental health counselors. Those counselors are really have a deep level of knowledge around mental health and supports. They're social workers along with being mental health support. So our school counselors have that support in addition to them working with the students on their schedules and the day-to-day types of work that the counseling office would typically do. So the mental health challenges that students face, I feel like schools are responding by staffing with the appropriate people who have that expertise. Mm-hmm. And so it's very different than when I was in school, for sure.
And it's even really different from a few years ago, right? I mean, that was one of the silver linings, so to speak, of a horrible pandemic, is it really shone a spotlight on this need for mental health.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think in addition, some of the spaces that we've created have also supported our students. So, for example, we have a calming room so that if a student becomes distressed or has an anxiety attack in class, then they have the ability to go to the counseling office and de-stress and de-escalate at their own at their own rate, like with what they need. In addition, we have across our 3 high schools, San Gabriel has, all 3 high schools have this, but San Gabriel has been working with our Dream Center. Our Dream Center is really giving a voice to those students who traditionally have not had that voice, our LGBTQ plus population, our migrant, immigrant population, where they can find a space to know that they will be supported. And we will work with them with whatever challenges or issues they may have. So the community has really responded well to our Dream Center as well, which is something we didn't have when I was in school or even prior to the pandemic. I think kids are coming with a voice, a very strong sense of agency and advocacy for what they want and what they need to be successful academically. And so to your point, I think that silver lining is definitely students coming, knowing what they need, and we're trying to support them with giving them that voice.
That's such a great point. I mean, the students are confident and they recognize that it's important to discuss well-being. It's important to discuss inclusion and support one another today. So let's go back to our trip down nostalgia lane of looking at what we have now compared to what we had then. So what are some of the top things students have access to today that you would have wished you would have had or are glad that you didn't have when you were a student?
Well, like I said, technology is something that has been so prevalent in our lessons nowadays. I really appreciate some of the websites that we've been able to use. Like I wish Google had been around when I was in school back in 1997 when we had research papers and we needed to look things up, or even how to do stuff. Like if I didn't know how to do a math problem, I can now look online and it can show me step by step how to kind of make my way through it. But honestly, one of my favorite things is the Desmos.com website. When I was in high school, we had to use the TI Texas Instrument calculators, graphing calculators, which were really annoying, very expensive, hard to deal with, and they didn't really show you what you were doing. They just kind of gave you a little bit of a picture. But now Desmos is this really beautiful, easy, free internet website that gives kids access to the math, to be creative with it, to be able to throw numbers and equations in there and see what they look like immediately, to be able to problem solve with it. And it's just been like a game changer.
So I only know the big calculator that you're talking about. So
Yes.
This is like an online platform or website that works like a calculator?
Yes, it's an online graphing calculator, but also there's also an interactive lesson version of it too. If you go onto teacher.desmos.com, where you can assign these really beautiful interactive lessons with your kids so that they can play around with the math before you really jump in and teach them how to maybe do the algebra with it. But it's been really great. You get to see what your kids are doing when they're on their computer. You can jump in and help them with all of that. They have great conversations. It's just a whole new world that brings math to light. So it's been great.
Well, and one of the things I love about the calculator discussion is there's so much conversation around generative AI, and you know, I think for those of us that didn't have access to that, it's like, well, you're just giving the kids the answers, and but no, really, like there's a whole learning that takes place that you're able to support now, right?
Yes, absolutely. With there's a pros and cons. There's math apps like Photomath and things like that where kids can get the answers to questions, but it also gives them the steps, right? So you're able to take a photo of a problem and it gives you how to solve the problem, which we were never able to do in the past. When I was in school, if we didn't know how to do it, we didn't know how to do it. And that was it. You had to go to tutoring. You had to talk to the teacher. There was or look in the math book, which is like a different language. So there's a lot of places now and websites and apps that kids can go on to find the answers that they need to kind of bridge that gap. So the kids that are using it in the appropriate way, it's definitely benefiting them in the long run. Letting them be more creative with it and become problem solvers rather than just human calculators.
I was going to say, it's really critical thinking, right? It's the journey,
Yes.
not just the answer.
Yes.
That's
yes.
awesome. What are some other things that students have access to today that you wish you had?
So at San Gabriel High School, as we were coming out of the pandemic and students had been in online learning, we knew that there was going to be learning loss. And so academically speaking for students, we knew we were going to have to deal with that. And so there was a look at changing our bell schedule so that we could create and carve out time for embedded intervention or intervention during the school day. And we call it Matador Enrichment Time, or Me Time. And so staff overwhelmingly voted yes for that. And so we were really excited to be able to, this past year, put that into place and have students 3 days a week be able to choose where they wanted to go for 40 minutes to get that extra support. One of the things that came out of that was the need for social emotional learning and the need for connecting with students. And so the Me Time has also become a place where teachers can connect, where they can de-stress, where students with the teachers, I think it's both. I think both our staff and our students are gaining a lot from connecting with each other, having fun. There's a lot of different opportunities, and so it's been a really great change for us. And I feel like if I would have had that as a student in high school, I probably would have gotten to know my teachers better, and would have leaned on them when things were tough, instead of trying to kind of push through and be stressed and overwhelmed. So I really feel like that intervention that we've created has been a game changer.
Let me add to that. We, as a teacher in the classroom, it's been really awesome to be able to talk with your students outside of the class time. You can have those conversations about their grades on a almost daily basis if you really need to. So you can show kids how their assignments are improving their grades. They can retake quizzes. They can retake tests. You get to have those conversations that normally you wouldn't have with those students if they don't show up to tutoring or whatnot, or come in at lunchtime outside of the class period. But what's also really great is that when they're in your class, you're able to kind of look at all of their classes. You can kind of peek into their grades. And so I've had a lot of really great conversations with kids that are like, you know what my English grade is? And I said, yeah, what's up, buddy? What are you doing? You know, and they know that there are people that are there that are kind of helpful. Even if they're not their English teacher, they're there and they want to help them improve that grade too. So it's been really awesome because kids know that you're on their side, even if it's not just your own class. You're there to help them with their science or their English or their history or whatnot. And I think that's been the biggest thing is they're like, okay, my teachers talk to each other. My teachers are all on the same team. They want me to succeed. And it's kind of like a team effort instead of just this isolated child by themselves.
That's such a great point. I hadn't thought of that back in our day, it was like you were just kind of in these singular classrooms and your teachers would have had no idea what was going on in your life. And being able to see kind of the whole experience for the student. That's great.
It is interesting because you'll see a kid that's doing maybe awful in your class, but amazing in other classes. And that's a really good moment to have because maybe that is a reflective moment of what am I not providing to this student, or maybe they're doing amazing in your class but struggling really hard in another class. But those conversations can happen and those reflections can happen, and that's more than ever before. Definitely because of technology too, having our grades online and everything online, we can see them easily like that too.
So what does Me Time actually look like? Do kids pick something individually each day, or is it for the semester? What does that actually look like?
So it's a weekly look. We have technology, a platform that allows us to have students go in and have their own account, pick the teacher that they would like to see. And that's done the prior week. And then by Friday, it shuts down, right? That choice is shut down. And then they have the schedule for the following week. Teachers can also choose who they'd wish to see. And if a teacher chooses a student, then that student is locked into that. Hopefully that's a good and a positive look for the student, which typically it is because someone's noticing them and wanting them, if that makes sense. And really, the routine that we created really supported teachers to know it was very predictable, so that everyone knew by Monday morning where they were going to go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 40 minutes before lunch, and everybody had a place to go. So your students who are achieving well and doing very well in school wanted to go to some of their classes to get that extra help, or some of the things I think about in getting kids ready for college or higher education, whatever that was going to look like for them. it's kind of like office hours where you put some responsibility on the student to really make a decision about where do I need help. And then I'm going to have this time in a classroom with the teacher outside of the class, the actual structured class. So it's kind of like I saw it as office hours as well, and that worked really well for a lot of students who may think, oh, I don't need any help, I'm doing fine, but they actually would pick teachers that they wanted to go see, talk to. They had more questions. They wanted to have an edit of a paper or work with their classmates, and so 3 or 4 students would pick the same teacher to meet up with, and that really, I feel like really had, there was a lot of success in that.
Yeah, we also had that 40-minute time, counselors could choose kids to come in. They might have a group of like 3 to 8 kids that they want to bring in and just have conversations with. We did an AP and honors fair during that time where teachers were able to choose students within all their classes that they'd like to go check out what's happening in the AP and honors world. Different types of classes that we've seen. What were some of the classes at the honors fair? Band. We had band on display. Lots of different clubs and lots of different programs that we have on campus, so kids could go and see what it is that they could do the next year. And that was a great use of that time as well, and didn't take away from the class period at all. But also, I think we're going towards where they might be able to have club meetings during that time. But it's a place for kids to also have like a mental health break. So there are kids that are doing really well, have A's across the board. They don't need to use the time to reflect on their classes, but sometimes they just need a quiet place to read or to think or to journal or to talk with another person that they don't get to talk to because they don't have classes with them maybe throughout the day. But it has so many different purposes that it's been a really great addition to our schedule.
So we're talking about positive things that you have now in schools and that you deal with. What about some of the things that you have now or that students experience that you are glad you didn't have when you were a student?
Social media is my number one answer on that one. High school can be hard enough without having to worry about what's going on the internet, whether your name is involved in something. We've seen that kind of be pulled into school, right? A lot of stuff that happens at school is because of something that happened online. Kids aren't, going to bed on time because they're up all night on their phones looking at, social media and TikTok and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really glad it was just an extra added stressor that I didn't have when I was in school.
Absolutely.
And I could add to that. I think a phone, when you think about a cell phone, its primary use is supposed to be phone. Mm-hmm. You can call people. But 2 things on a cell phone that bring a lot of heartache and trouble to some students would be the fact that we can take photos.
Yes.
And we can video. And I feel like that ability on the phones really can cause a lot of unnecessary drama, stress, anxiety. Students get depressed. And when photos are taken at school in many different locations, we've had to deal with all of the repercussions that come from and the consequences that come from a student just making a really bad decision. They don't understand the impact that taking a photo, or even if it looks like they're taking a photo but they're not, or it looks like they're video taping or doing a video of something, can trigger students in all kinds of ways. And so I think that really is something I wish for some way we could work with, that shuts off when a kid enters into school and they don't have the ability to take pictures or take video of things going on at school. But there is positive of that too. Videos can be projects that students do, but I think there's some negative consequences from students having the ability to take pictures and take video while at school. And
their ability to spread those things so quickly. It doesn't, back in the day when you wanted to say something or write something, you had to write it out by hand, and that, there was a thinking process that went along with it. But now you can just send a photo and airdrop it to 500 people in 3 seconds, and so there's not a lot of thinking time that can happen in between there. And I feel like that's something that has changed a lot is that, to do bad stuff in the past, there was a little bit of time in between to be able to process. But now everything is so instantaneous that it can be really difficult. So, yeah, cell phones are pretty hard. And in the classroom, too,
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, the pictures of, homework these days is I think, a hard topic because how quickly it is to take a photo of someone's work and then just copy it down. Like there's no thought process between you doing the problems. You don't know if you're not watching them do it in front of you, if it's genuinely their work or not. But at the same time, you can use the phone to take videos and put those things onto your Google Classroom and show that you've done your learning that way. So it does have these pros and cons to it.
It's so interesting. A lot of social pressure, right? Even more need for mental health supports and me time, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Looking at teaching practices, what are some teaching techniques that are being used today that may not have been used back when we were in high school?
Well, I think that the big difference, and we've always had group work. Group work has always been something that you could do in the classroom. I think that nowadays it's a lot more prevalent. We definitely see the benefit of having kids work together and collaborate together. I personally am a verbal processor, so when I was in school, the one thing that I appreciated about my math teacher was that they let me talk to the people next to me. And I know that that's not necessarily something that happens in a lot of math classrooms, but that ability to kind of go through problems together with another human really enabled me to understand the material. And so I think the people are having their kids sit more together in groups. They're collaborating a lot more on a daily basis instead of just an activity that they do maybe once every couple weeks or once a month or something. We don't necessarily all sit in rows anymore. The teacher is not the what they call the sage on the stage, right? It's a lot about kids working together to understand what they're working on, but also to be creative with it.
To add to that, I would say that as I've gone into classrooms and observed, many teachers doing what Amanda's talking about, the idea of doing collaborative work and not just for a project, so we have to quickly come together and create something, but really this daily look at structures that would create conversations between students, discussions, and then making it a whole class conversation, which could also be very collaborative as well. So the idea of like a Socratic seminar, literature circles, I've seen an increase, more teachers taking that on and really thinking about how they can talk less and give students opportunity to process. Because when you're talking, your brain is working to think through things. And so the student talk has increased definitely classrooms, which is a good thing.
I've heard that term before, Socratic
Seminars.
and then the literature circles. What does that look like? I mean, are they literally in a circle having a conversation?
So Socratic seminar, really the technique of Socratic questioning, it's the way you ask questions, right, and think through responses. And so a Socratic seminar could be an inner circle, outer circle. And so the students in the inner circle are having the seminar, the Socratic seminar, which is asking questions and really reviewing maybe a piece of text or something that they've written that the teacher has assigned for them to review. And so the Socratic seminar allows critical thinking and asking questions to clarify your own understanding of the material, the content. And then the outer circle would be observing, giving feedback, and then you switch and the outer circle becomes the inner circle. They look at another piece of text. The outer circle then observes, gives feedback. And so that's a process that's, again, hitting at really the higher levels of thinking that we want students to be doing. Literature circles, obviously, literature really speaks to this type of strategy happening in an English classroom, but it's more of students choosing a novel that they'd like. So it's self-selection. It's there's some autonomy for the student to choose a novel. Probably a group of 4 or 5 students that are selected to be as a group, and then they take time over the course of a month, maybe, because you're reading the novel, and then you're tackling, comprehending it together, looking at theme, looking at tone, plot, but you're doing this together and really discussing it. And I think what's really great about it is that there's choice involved. And then in the end, kids are taking ownership of how they're going to talk about the book. It's not being controlled by the teacher. The students have the abilities to navigate their own conversation. And it can start very structured, if you will, where every student has a role that they play in the group to have the conversation begin to happen. And then you release that responsibility. It's kind of like that gradual release, responsibility to independence. And then they're just kind of looking at a book. They pick a book maybe last quarter of the year, and they're able to have this really amazing conversation about a novel that they've read. So,
and what I love about that is we're talking about, then and now, we're talking about technology. That's like technology free, right? There, it is people engaging in conversations, engaging in learning together.
Absolutely.
That's very cool.
I think it's something that they need nowadays more than ever because they do spend more time on technology. And so kind of reintroducing the fact that you can have a conversation with another human face to face, not via text, is really important. But I wanted to add too, one of the big differences, is the noise level within the classroom, I feel is a lot different. When I started teaching, I remember thinking it needed to be really quiet in there. But now I love the phrase productive noise. And it's so much better when you're walking around your classroom and kids are talking to each other. It can get kind of loud in there, but a lot of times they're really like focusing on it and having a good conversation. I like to play a little soft music, kind of like Starbucks jazz music in the background so that it's not quiet, because I feel like the quiet is where people can kind of hide and not engage and not practice what they know. When it's a little bit loud, people feel more free to like open up and converse and learn. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say one more thing that I was thinking about as I walked into classrooms this year and reflecting. The idea that teachers create these community circles. And so they'll have students come together in a large circle. They'll give them a talking piece. So that could be an item in the classroom, the pen or something. And they'll give it to a student and ask them to begin by giving them a prompt, a question. And it could even be as simple as, how are you feeling today? Or what did you do this past weekend? Give the talking piece to a student who wants to begin, and then everybody has a chance to put their thoughts in and talk a little bit before class actually starts with the academic content. And I find that really nice. And I have teachers who have really taken that on as a daily or maybe weekly practice. Maybe we do that Friday mornings, or maybe we do that to Monday morning as we start our week, and I just want to check in with you. So community circles is something that I wish I had, and also what I'm seeing as a huge, it's a huge game changer, and it's a very new technique. It's happened mostly coming out of the pandemic again, to really connect with students.
It's almost a recognition that everyone comes to the classroom with a life and with concerns, and maybe with a good night's sleep or not, or maybe something going on, right? And so they're able to kind of set that stage before learning happens.
Absolutely.
I think that takes us nicely to our next topic, which is around discipline, which sounds like such a negative topic, but I think there's been so much changes that have happened in the area of discipline. So what does that look like today compared to when you were a kid?
So I think at a school level, things that we put in place and really a concerted effort and a focus on initiatives specifically to that would be our PBIS, or Positive Behavior Intervention and Support, our system that we've created. And it's called the Bravo Way. And it speaks to what we want students to be doing, how we want them to be acting. And really, it enables teachers to focus in on or pay attention to when a student is doing what they should be doing. We're going to notice that and bring attention to it. When students aren't doing what they are supposed to be doing, and maybe there's something happening that there needs to be some consequences because it's either causing someone to be unsafe or not feel comfortable because of the behavior, we really have embraced the idea of pre-correctives, behavior management, not so much discipline, And so when you think about managing behavior, for me, that's what needs to be living in schools, because we're a school. We should be teaching. Students should be learning. And when it comes to behaviors, that can happen. I can learn how to act in certain ways or respond in certain ways. If we teach them, then students can learn that. And so the punitive nature of schools is really something that, when we look at the data and the research, it was not effective. It helped the adults navigate, and we felt better, but it didn't bring kids back into school in ways that showed that they had changed that behavior and were making good decisions. And so when I think about discipline, there is a place for it, and we do have consequences for behaviors when they are doing things that, again, would create an unsafe environment, or it's chronic and repeated over and over, right? We need to handle that. But I think overall, the idea of managing the behavior and having progressive discipline is really the most effective way to handle behavior in schools.
Yeah, it seems like it's more restorative and reflective than it used to be. Having those conversations with kids has helped a lot in having them reflect on their own behavior instead of just punishing them for whatever thing they did. They're still kids. You know, we have high schoolers from 14 to 18, and they're still kids, but they're just big. Yeah. They still need to learn how to behave and how to reflect and how to change, because we are the same. Right? As adults, we reflect, and sometimes our behavior is not exactly perfect, but we learn from it, and we try to move on, and that's what we try to help our kids with.
Yeah. And as you said, their schools are places of learning. We're there to teach, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. We also have the at our school. She said that we have the Bravo way. So we wanted to teach our kids to be. Bravo stands for be respectful, safe, actively engaged, and responsible. We also pass out little Bravo bucks to students when they are caught being good, doing things that we appreciate, doing well in class, helping other kids out, being kind. Anytime we see kind of those four things: responsibility, respectable, safeness, and being actively engaged. And they get to go to our little shop on campus called the El Mercado, where they get to turn in their Bravo bucks. Like someone said, it's like a Chuck E. Cheese, the rewards area, where they get to turn in their Bravo bucks for little trinkets, and it could be like school supplies or little things to chew on, chips and candies and things. Stickers. I don't know. I've seen some really wacky things in there, but kids get a kick out of like going in and being able to choose some stuff for their good behavior.
It's fun for them, right?
Yes.
They look forward to it.
Yes. There's also a raffle at the end of the year, right? We had a raffle recently. So every time you turn in your tickets at the Bravo store, the El Mercado, they put it into a giant bin to raffle off, and then somebody gets to some good prizes at the end of the year too.
When you look at our schools today, do you think they are evolving into a more equitable future for our students?
I do. Yes.
I do. I pause to think about like the ways in which we're working on that. And I've immersed myself in a lot of the current practices that are landing in schools. And I think that the idea of looking at systems that create, I think, unintentional barriers that kind of limit access for certain populations on our campus. I think special education, we need to look at more deeply that program and those students and to support them. I think our English language learners need tremendous support, and we're needing to do better by them. And I think our Latino students, as they come, we need to really take a look at when they're not succeeding or when they're not accessing certain programs, why that is, and not just say, well, they don't want that, or, that's their choice. I'm not going to engage and inquire about why they wouldn't want to be if they look very capable. Why is it that they're not showing up in those spaces? So there's a lot more work to do, I think, as a system, and not just San Gabriel High School. I think it's just a system quite honestly, across this country in dealing with trying to be more inclusive. But we're on the way, and it's very encouraging. And I think we have a staff who's very open to engaging in ways to give access to all students. And then when they have access to those programs or to things they need, then keeping them in that, not letting them kind of walk away or quite honestly give up when it gets hard. And also creating spaces where they feel included. Because I think as I'm thinking about it, there's another aspect to equity and equitable spaces, which is a sense of belonging, kind of the social construct. Like, why do I not feel like I belong in this space? Why am I kind of checking out? Student might not know that, but as adults, we need to ask those questions and really engage with the students so that they can keep at it, especially when it gets hard, and not give up.
And some of the ways I think in our district, Alhambra Unified, we've tried to create a little bit more equity is we do have equity committees across the district that are teacher-led committees where they are going to start asking them kind of the harder questions, things that we've never really spoken about out loud. So we're on that journey right now. We also have open enrollment in our AP and honors classes, so kids can choose to go where they want to go in that aspect. But also, I think the me time, just the fact that we have a space within the school day for everybody to get the help that they need, like creates a little bit more equity among the students. You know, kids that have to go home at the end of the day to go help, they might have jobs, they might have to help their families. They don't have to worry about missing tutoring because they have it within their schedule. So
I was wondering if me time was helping with that as well.
yeah, absolutely. The kids seem to be very fond of it too. They appreciate it. It was one of the big things this year that they enjoyed and they were very thankful for.
Yeah, and when kids are enjoying school, they come to school and they stay in school, right? Mm-hmm. So our last question is, what is something you now know that you wish you had known when you were a teacher and educator earlier in your career?
So this was actually a hard question for me because there's so many things that you learn throughout the years, you know, to narrow it down to one. So I conversed with a couple other teachers, science teachers, math teachers mostly, and everybody kind of answered the same thing. They said that they believe that the importance of relationship building with your kids, they wish they'd focused on that earlier, right? So when you become a high school teacher, you get very bogged down with curriculum and pacing and worrying about test scores and what chapter you're going to be on next week, right? But the relationship building with your kids and becoming a human to your students is going to help them overall. And it's important to take that time within your lessons. I mean, to have conversations with your students, get to know your students. We all know this, but we tend to get, you know, on this machine of like trying to get through our curriculum. So it's okay to spend time getting to know your kids on a daily basis. Having conversations with them, like learning who they are as human beings, is probably the biggest thing that we know now, right?
Agreed. Mm-hmm. I think to add to that, for me, you know, say it was a long time ago I started teaching, but it was a long time ago. And yeah, like 25 years ago. And I feel like when I came into the teaching, you know, as an educator into a high school, basically was just given a chemistry book and told you start with chapter 1. And that's how it started. And I really was very isolated. It was not as collaborative, I think, as it is today. And even within our bell schedule, and we've had this for a while at St. Gabriel, is to have dedicated time during the school day where kids leave early and teachers come together and work together and see each other on an almost weekly basis, which I wish I could have had because I spent all my lunchtime running around to classrooms talking to teachers and staying late after school talking with teachers because I didn't have any embedded time during the school day to do that. So I come very collaborative by nature. I seek and learn from others' ideas, and the conversations are really rich for me today with colleagues and teachers. And so I think if I could have had time dedicated to that beginning my career, I think I would have not have been as stressed out. I mean, it's still very stressful, but I think it would have been in community, right? Like it would have been a shared experience that I could have leaned on some people a little bit more.
Absolutely. It's very helpful to have those conversations with your colleagues, not within the passing period, those like 8-minute passing periods, but a designated time where you can, you know, have those really rich conversations about how people are kind of reaching out to their students and really helping them in certain ways. Absolutely.
This is a wonderful conversation. Thank you both so much for coming to Downey, to our studio here, and visiting us. Thanks to our listeners, and wishing you all a wonderful summer, and looking forward to seeing you in the 2023-24 school year. Take care.
Please follow the Los Angeles County Office of Education on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Los Angeles COE. That's Los Angeles COE. Or you can find us on Facebook and LinkedIn at Los Angeles County Office of Education.